All right, welcome to the Bacon, Bibles, and Barbells Podcast. My name is Justin Johnson, and I'm joined by Coach Bill, Coach Amanda, and our guest, Dr. Jordan Grant, who does not like to be called Dr. Grant, apparently. So we're going to be talking about testosterone replacement and probably just hormone replacement in general. Maybe TRT would be too narrow for this discussion. We're going to talk about who might need it, who it's for, what you should think about health-wise, some other options, positives and negatives, and then a whole bunch of other stuff as well that we'd love to cover while we've got Jordan here. So quickly, though, we'll talk about what we're doing in our training goals and diets and things like that. Bill is probably going to have the most drama as it pertains to that area, so we'll let him go last. Amanda, what are you doing right now? How's your training and diet stuff going? What are you working toward?
Yeah, I think I am starting week 3 of more lower body than upper body. So for those who haven't been listening, I was doing just a traditional upper-lower split. Now I am doing 2 full lower body days still, but then I have, and 1 upper body day, but the last day is basically a quick upper body pump and then lower again. So probably a third of that day is upper body and the rest lower. Yeah. So really trying to get the lower to grow because I just tend to put on shoulders far more than I do glutes, hams, and quads. So trying to really refocus. But I saw myself in the mirror a couple days ago and I was like, I think I'm starting to see some actual changes. So nice. I think it's working. Nutrition's been good. I've been really good about sticking to that. Not necessarily in a cut or anything right now. I'm just kind of maintaining. So if I don't hit everything exactly, I'm not being super staunch about that as long as I'm getting as many grams of protein as I need and actually hitting the carbs. Really trying to focus on the carbs because if I don't, I tend to try to fill it with fats. Like that's what my natural inclination is. So making sure I get all the glycogen replenishment that I possibly can.
You and every American, by the way.
I know, right? Well, I still don't overshoot fats like probably the traditional American diet. It's hard for me to go that high, but
I wasn't intending to besmirch you that poorly.
No. If you really insulted me, I would know. No, I would. And so it's.
I don't know.
I
keep trying, and you keep not getting upset. So.
Yeah. Well, you haven't met my husband yet, so.
No, I mean, actually, he's got a great sense of humor, so I can see it.
He does. But yeah, everything's just kind of coasting along. So I'm glad to see that there's actually some physical changes that are noticeable to me. So just going to keep on going. The whole trust the process is a lot easier to trust when you can see a little bit of results.
Yeah. So 2 things. Are you switching to wellness? And also, how come you are the one that puts on upper body mass so easily and has struggles with glutes? And I'm like, I think Bill and I are both the opposite of that. Like, I never have tried to consciously grow my glutes, and I can't buy pants from normal places any longer.
And I can just walk up a hill, and it's like I got this absolute wagon the next day. It's like, okay, grow my glutes.
Yeah.
When I weighed 145 pounds before I started training and eating like at all, I had a hard time buying pants back then because of my thighs and my glutes.
That's hilarious. Well, I'm not switching to wellness. What I said in the beginning of this year about bikini is going to probably start looking a little more muscular because the fit model division was introduced is looking like that prediction is coming true. So I'm going to be trying to do that. I had to put on glute growth anyway, even by the old standard. But I just really want to make sure I am.
So they're looking for specifically a more developed lower body, though. The upper body is probably fairly similar.
Really, it's the tie-in that they're looking for. So the glute ham tie-in, and if you don't have size enough on glutes and hams, it's hard to get lean enough to show that. So that's really what the aim is. I probably still will need to put on some shoulders, but we're able to pull that back a little bit to refocus. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do right now. Man, I don't know what to attribute it to, if it's just genetics or the fact that I have PCOS. I tend to gain a little bit more like a man in the first place. I'm not sure what the reason is, but I'm going to roll with it. I'll do what I have to do.
I do blame it part of it on me previously being probably very estrogenic, I believe, when I was natural. Because I always had very adequate estrogen, and at least once I tested it, testosterone was fairly low. Because once I've been on TRT, I've noticed that the bias has shifted significantly for me. So I don't know. Take that for what it's worth. Who knows? Okay.
How's your training?
Oh, you don't want to know. Jordan, how's yours?
My training has actually just gotten back on track. I had about a 9-week hiatus. The last 9 weeks, I've lost 25 pounds due to a sudden onset gastritis, IBS, I don't know what issue.
Yikes.
Horrible, couldn't eat, and it's been a humbling experience. I'll just put it that way.
I think you posted about that a little bit.
I haven't said anything directly about myself, but I've kind of in comments and stuff.
I thought it was in a comment, in a group. Yeah. I didn't know you were still struggling. Is that seem to be past now?
Just the last week, it's like I don't think I've had a single pain after eating any food.
25 pounds though.
Dude, it was.
You were already lean too. You weren't. I was lean. I've only ever seen you lean.
I was lean. I was getting fluffier. I was already doing some habits that I know I didn't need to engage in, like eating popcorn every day at 4 p.m. and then 2 beers and then cheese and crackers before supper. And it was like
that homestead life's been good to you.
It was good, but it was like I was becoming a slave to that, honestly. And I'd already thought in my head, and I was dealing with some anxiety stuff. And I think it all just, God snaps you out of it. And this did it. And I didn't eat for about the first 3 or 4 days at all. And then I was eating about 500 calories a day for a couple weeks. I wasn't hungry. I mean, I was scared to eat. So I kept training. And thankfully, my strength did not plummet like I thought it would. So that was eye-opening. It was a very interesting little experiment, actually, on a mega caloric deficit, unplanned diet. And so I actually started looking really cool, getting more ab veins and new veins I've never seen. And it was like, okay. And now I'm like 180 and holding steady. And I look bigger in the mirror at the gym right now than I ever have, which is, I think, because I started eating real food too. I started going full on like quality food. I've been doing ground beef and white rice for lunch like every day, and it's my favorite thing in the world to eat. And just eggs and just sweet potatoes and
that is my least favorite lunch to eat. Like I actually prefer chicken and rice more than ground beef. Yeah, because I can flavor it with more things. There's more options. Like I don't know. I love beef more than chicken in general.
Right.
But the ground beef and rice thing, I have not found the right sauce, spice combo, or whatever. It is like eating cardboard to me. But I can throw barbecue sauce on chicken out of the oven with rice, just have it all together. And I'm good. I'm very happy with that.
I am 100% the opposite of that. Like I could do ground beef.
I love it.
Put whatever, like Asian sauces are probably my favorite. If I'm like deep in a prep, you can get
same for me, but they just
sugar-free Asian sauces. It's delicious.
Yeah, like I've done that before, and I can't make the ground beef taste good. Like I could do a burger for lunch every day. Like I could totally do that. I love burgers, but like something about or even like steak meat, like shredded beef or anything like that. Great. There's something about it's my problem. I don't know, but like it's just the most boring thing in the world to me. It'd be a good way to lose weight because it'd be easy to not eat it because I just
I don't mind. And I've been doing avocado mixed with stuff and mushing it in there and just.
So do you feel like you lost? I mean, obviously some of that was water. Probably several pounds of it had to be. Yeah. So it wasn't all tissue loss.
No.
Do you feel like you've lost any muscle mass through this?
No, I honestly don't. My strength has not moved much at all. So maybe a pound or two of real muscle tissue, if I had to guess. Yeah, but I stayed on my testosterone. I mean, I stayed consistent. Even when my stomach's hurting, I'm like, I'm going to the gym. I got to move. I got to do something. I can't lay around and mope. Made myself take multiple walks every day out in the sun. Like, it just helped me do a reset. And my training, I've been on maintenance mode for like a year and a half since I left urology practice and doing like a couple sets, every 4 to 5 days for everything and just hit it hard, get out. I haven't lost anything. But now that I'm looking better, I'm like, I'm going to bump the volume just a little bit. Let's just see how we can go with this. So
when you're able to eat again too. When you say strength though, you train like a bodybuilder right now, right? So it's higher reps typically.
It is. It depends on the movement. I still am kind of the traditional start with a compound, even though compounds for me now are more a plate loaded machine or something than a barbell. But I still like doing the sets of 5 to 8, something like that on the first exercise, and then doing
make it a little heavier.
Yep.
Cool. Like a heavier set than a back off set kind of thing.
Pretty much. Yep.
I think that's Menzer and others. That's the low volume, higher intensity.
Yeah. And I've done the opposite. When I was in, 7-8 years ago, I did the Mike Israetel, like push the volume, ramp it from low to high over a mesocycle. And I got really wrecked from it. Honestly, it was, and I was taking PEDs. I was on 500 tests for a year. I was in the gym for 2.5 hours doing, I don't know how many sets, trying to get it in every 4 days, hit it twice a week. I couldn't do it. So
I have not had much success putting on muscle mass with people that go the pure high volume route. There has to be some degree of mechanical tension, in my opinion. Even if the set never goes below 8, you got to struggle at some point, and something has to you have to get to a point where it feels heavy at some point for the muscle to grow, in my opinion. Like the pure chasing pump stuff, like you got to get close to failure.
You do, and I appreciate that the high volume guys at least admit that, but I do think there's something to the high volume and the cosmetic part of it, because you're pumping so much into the muscle, it's transient, and the lower rep, high intensity, it gives you that, I call it the old man muscle. It gives you that just different look.
It's grainy.
It is. And I see it now. I see it that I'm leaner, and I've done heavy for most of my life. Not that I'm a big guy, but for my frame, I look bigger than I am, and so it's.
How tall are you?
I'm 6 foot. And lean. I was walking around 200, fairly lean. And now, like I said, I'm 180 now, but a lot of that's other stuff. But people ask me, what are you, 220? And I think it's just got broad shoulders and a narrow waist. It's that classic physique type, not classic physique, whatever the physique, men's physique look or whatever.
Yeah, you've got a long clavicle. It can really make you look a whole lot bigger than you may otherwise.
Yeah. But I have no depth.
Nice.
I have no pecs. Like I have no depth to me, and my, it is what it is. So.
Yeah. I'm kind of the like thick boy club powerlifter over here, but but I wouldn't say I have broad shoulders. they look broader than they are because I actually have some delts now.
Right.
Cool. Awesome. Bill, you got some drama, so let's talk about that for a minute.
So I was on my mini cut, and being aggressive as I am, I started at like 1,800 calories, which was not too terrible. But I started going down and down and down. And I ended up maybe like 1,350 a day for the last week. And I ended up getting sick. I lost about 12 pounds, but I ended up getting sick. And it's just unavoidable. The immune system just takes a huge hit. That's it. I don't change my training. I didn't change any of my training.
Yeah.
And so I think probably what it was is I just pushed calories too low, because my hunger signals were starting to go down and down and down. And I'm off of peak bulk too. And so hunger signals are not really there. And so I just kind of wasn't eating enough. So I got sick. I surpassed my goal weight anyway. And if you see my pictures on Instagram, you'll know I got below my 17% body fat maintenance, whatever, which is great. We're probably right at it. And so I'm good for the summer. I'll just hold there and continue bulking for the remainder of the fall. But I went back to a quality food focused diet. And so for the last couple of days, I've had about, I've been using 95.5 beef, and raw cheddar. I've had about 6 burgers a day. No bun, of course, with pickles and lots of grapes, apples, bananas, eggs. I've been putting Mike's hot honey on everything, including my avocados, which is amazing. If y'all don't eat it, Mike's hot honey is incredible. And then I made a dill sauce out of, just Greek yogurt and some fresh dill and some things like that. I was having a hard time eating some of it some days, and so I was wrapping some of it up in rice paper wrappers. Just makes it a little easier to put down. But I feel a little better. Was still sort of running a low-grade fever today. Not too bad, but it's only been a few days. But I will say I haven't gained really much weight on the scale, a few pounds, nothing really. even though I've been slamming back carbs. And the raw cheddar is what I've been using for my additional fats. And it's delicious, by the way. I mean, it's almost like that's probably pretty addictive. I need to slow down on it a little bit.
Yeah.
But, the raw cheddar is fantastic. It's real sharp. And it's got a great flavor.
We've been getting higher quality cheeses lately too, and I've noticed a few. So it tastes better, by the way. And I'm not some cheese.
Sure.
Like, there's people that are into cheese. I've never been like a cheese connoisseur or anything, but I've noticed that the texture is wildly different and way better.
Yep.
And my wife, she's not lactose intolerant, but cheese just messes with her. Especially cheese has always messed with her. No problems whatsoever. She can eat a homemade pizza with the higher quality mozzarella. No problems whatsoever all of a sudden.
Yeah.
Like, totally changed everything.
I will say that the flavor profiles are far more complex. It's more enjoyable to eat. You don't have to eat as much, and they're typically lower in fat and higher in protein if it's a sharp cheddar.
Yeah.
And so you're getting 5 grams of protein per slice. I mean, that's a significant amount of protein, and the cheese still melts because it's got plenty of fat in it.
Yeah.
I will say so far my favorite is Manchego, which is a sheep milk cheddar. That's really, really delicious if you can find it. It's quite expensive, but I've been putting that on my burgers, fresh avocado, eggs, basically eating the stuff that guys eat off cutting boards, but I don't eat it off a cutting board. I just put it on a plate.
Charcuterie board on a burger.
Yeah, but it's real simple. I had some biltong. I will still have some whey here and there if my stomach doesn't feel amazing. I'll just have a little bit of whey, and I always use raw whey. They're not a sponsor, but I just like them. Their grass-fed isolate's really, really good, and makes me feel good. And so actually, I've been recovering okay. I've been sleeping about 10 hours. I can't help it. I just get real tired at night, just because I'm sick. It's one of those things. You just end up falling asleep, and you wake up when you wake up. But
I wish I had that when I was sick, man. I can't sleep.
Yeah, but other than it, I think I'm helped.
Anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I use my, I've got an 18-inch neck, and so I use my CPAP, and so that helps a little bit. There is some conditioning there that helps a little bit to go to sleep. When I feel the CPAP air blowing, it helps me go to and stay asleep.
Yeah, it is a funny thing. I have a similar thing. I put the CPAP on, and it's like my brain knows, like, it must be sleepy time.
Yeah, so actually I feel a lot better. My strength was unreal these past 3 days now that I've refed. Some of the lifts that I was recording.
Always fun.
Well, it's wild. Like, some of the lifts I was recording, like I love single arm tricep press downs on the cable as my last set for triceps. And I mean, I'm doing I had to move it up to 50 pounds today for a set of 10 because I was just feeling so insanely strong on those. I had been doing 30 pounds up until now. And same thing with Bulgarians. I picked up a bunch of weight today. My press flies have moved up to 65s and on the flats. And it's pretty intense. And I even managed to get in a 30-minute uphill walk afterwards. Nice. And so feel really good after the refeeding. Not wild. My calories are not out of control, just so everybody knows. I'm not just going ham. I'm still only eating about 2,800 calories a day. So I'm not even back at maintenance yet, but because I don't want to overload my body with water. So it's not kind of dangerous to do that. You don't want to gain 15 pounds of water in a couple of days. That's not safe. And
by the way, is your neck bigger around than your arms?
Yes. Yeah. So my arms are 17 inches. My neck is 18 inches. How about that for genetics?
Yeah. I was just wondering because my neck is, I think, 18 and a half, but my arms are, they're not quite that right now because I've been in a deficit, but they'll be about that when I go back to maintenance. I don't know if I've ever met, except for a fat guy, right? But
could that be because of jujitsu?
Yeah, it probably is. I use my traps and neck a lot. And so we're in this posture quite a bit. And so my traps, if you ever see my pictures on Instagram, my traps are way overdeveloped. And I think that has a lot to do with it. And so if I had the choice, I would lose a little trap and put it in my arms. So luckily,
I've never actually trained traps. It's the strong man.
I never train them. But luckily I'm a short king, unlike y'all. And so 17-inch arms on me look huge.
It works great. And
it's all relative.
Your arms are a little bit on the short side too, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Dude, guys with short arms, I tell you what, it is amazing what that does for how you look. It is phenomenal.
It's wild. Yeah. So
my arms are slightly longer than average, maybe.
Yeah, I've got monkey arms for my height.
Yeah. You've got Jordan's got like deadlift build. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So,
Yeah. Mine's real quick. I've got this is my last week of this deficit, about 3 months. I'm looking forward to getting strong again. I feel weak and wimpy. I did last week we were camping, and so I did a full body day on Saturday, and kind of tested where things were. So I haven't squatted this year. I know that. So I did like a comp squat, 500 for 5 wasn't too bad. And I've lost a lot of weight around in my midsection, or a lot of size around my midsection, which really usually makes my squat go down. So I wouldn't put myself back up in the 600s yet, but I don't think there's a significant loss there. So I'm pretty happy with where it is. And I benched 335 for 5, which that shocked me. Usually weight loss tanks my bench hard. That's not a PR. My PR was last year. I weighed 280 when I hit 350 for 5. So for the same reps, but I was training bench. I haven't benched. I usually bench in the high 200s right now. So like I was really, really happy with that, because what I'd like to do this year, I'm announcing my goal, bench 405 without having to weigh so much. I want to bench at least weigh under 260, bench 405, because bench I'm a terrible bench press, so I'd like to at least get that. Deadlift I pulled 550 for 2, so that's pretty much actually ballpark where I was. So I really want to see where I am after a month of maintenance and all that. I'm ready to be done. I'm tired of training high volume. I want to lift heavy weights again. That's why I got into this game. So my body is rested. I have no pains, no anything. So I'm just ready to go.
I should mention, by the way, that since I had somebody accuse me of being small and flat this week, that I am 225 pounds at 5'9". So, since
5'9's not. You always talk about your. I was going to ask you how tall you were.
Yeah, I'm 5.
I've never asked you. 5'9's not short. That's weird talk.
Yeah, it's not super short. It's but I have that weird thing where I have like a long torso, and so it makes me look odd proportions. My torso, I'm sure you see my pictures, can really stretch out.
It makes you look leaner. It's all good.
It does. I wish I didn't have the love handles, but here we are.
Yeah, I don't get the back fat so much. Fortunately, it's all glute fat for me.
Yeah. So, but the good thing is that last time I was around 14-15% body fat. I'm sure Justin, you remember back in October when I was shredded up. I was like 201, 202 pounds. And so now around 17%, I'm 225. And so I've made significant gains over the last 20 weeks. But that's also because I've never really trained like this before. And so it's pretty significant. My guess would be I'll be fairly lean around 215. Yeah. And so hopefully that'll be pretty good.
So the other interesting thing for me is I thought I would weigh at the end of this cut like 245. I started because I'd already lost a lot of the weight. I wasn't fluffy anymore from last summer when I bulked up. So I thought I'd weigh like 245. This morning I weighed 255, I believe. So I think I recomped is my guess. That's the only explanation I have.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, because like I think I think I did anyway. It's hard to say, but like it's weird. It's not what I expected. I thought I'd get to this point and be like 245, but my waist is where I thought it would be. So let me show you guys a picture. This is from Saturday or Sunday. I don't remember. What is my body fat now? You guys are bodybuilders. You tell me.
17 or 18%.
Yeah.
You
I
want to
was
see it
going to
again?
go a little lower, 15, 16.
It could be as low as 16. Your waist is small, so it's hard for me to tell.
Yeah. I'm bad at estimating the actual true body fat percentage.
Mm-hmm.
It's real hard to tell without a true DEXA scan, but even then, those aren't always accurate.
Yeah, you need an MRI.
I was hoping for you guys to say like 14% or something, but okay.
No, but you know what that means, though, is that you show well at higher body fat percentages, which means you can live more.
I always have. I've always looked leaner than I am.
I tell people this all the time. I'm like, why do you want to be below 14% body fat, man? If you can show it 17, 18%, that is so much more comfortable.
Yeah,
it is.
If you're comfortable how you look and you're performing well, like to me, that's all. I don't care about the percentage at all. It doesn't.
Yeah. And
I just thought the number would be neat, though. I mean,
yeah, no. And there's, I mean, honestly,
On
we're
the
going to talk
opinion
all
of
about
these two coaches.
we're all gonna talk about not chasing numbers here in a minute. So I guess
well, I would say at 14%, 14%, you'd be pretty shredded. I would think you'd be real.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Well,
would think so.
So the part of the reason I threw that number out there, you guys haven't seen my lower body, but my
Your
lower body transformed more than my upper body. I actually have, like, you can see some quad separation, and I have not had that since before I started this journey in 2016.
You do have a quad separation recently.
Yeah, which I did not.
Very much sounds like recomping, especially like with a 10-pound difference.
Oh yeah.
Than what you thought.
Yeah. So anyway,
Cool.
let's get to it then. We could just retitle this "Don't Chase the Numbers." So Dr. Jordan Grant, who we will heretofore refer to as Jordan because he's cool and he likes it that way.
Yeah.
He is, in my opinion, and I did not tell him I was going to say this, but he is, in my opinion, one of the foremost experts in the country on testosterone replacement. He's been a sane voice
Agreed.
among a lot of insanity. In fact, when I started my journey, your content on the TRT and hormone optimization channel, specifically you, was very clarifying to me, very helpful. It's benefited not just me, but tons of clients and people who never became clients who I've been able to give advice to. It was very transformative for me and helped me go down the rabbit hole of like, okay, so this is the truth, or at least as much truth as we can discern. We'll get into that later.
Right.
Because those of you who do not follow Jordan on Facebook, you should. He doesn't just talk about TRT. He actually talks about, like, how to discern the truth. And it's very important, especially from a Christian worldview, because we should, of all people, be the most discerning of the truth and understanding what the limitations of the evidence is that we have in front of us, and considering them all as potentially valid in light of what they are or are not, including that which is clinical, anecdotal, etc. They're all valid and they all have a place and should all be considered holistically when we decide to say something is true or not true. So I'd like to start this out with just asking, who needs TRT? Who is TRT for? How do we decide? How does an individual who goes, hey, I don't feel they're 30, 35 years old, maybe. We're not going to say 40 anymore because that's not the number anymore, is it?
No.
Someone of any age, really, who's like, you know what? I feel like I should feel better than I do. I'm eating generally right, maybe not totally, but like they're getting their protein in, they're training, they go for a couple walks a day or whatever. They're not a hermit isolated in an office or whatever. They're trying, but the results aren't there. We're not going to go into why that may be, because that could be a whole other podcast. Boy, it could be. Actually, I would love to have you on to talk about that because I've heard some of your content on that. But what's their next move? What should someone who's in those shoes do to say, is this right for me? Who should they talk to? That kind of thing.
And that could be a topic of a whole show, honestly, in of itself. So, because we know what the normal answer is going to be in the allopathic world, and is going to be check their blood work, see where their levels are at. If they're below a certain number, they get TRT. Like, that's generally how it works.
Yeah.
I used to be that way, when I came out of training, not 100%, because I've always kind of thought of these things a little differently. But nowadays, I am much more in the utilitarian, pragmatic side of goal-based. What are we doing? What do you need? What are you already doing? And still, like you say, the people that they're doing the right, quote unquote, things and are still having those quote unquote low T symptoms. To me, those are the ideal candidates for it. Mm-hmm. I see guys from all ages. I'm one of the few who will actually put an 18-year-old, if they truly need it, on TRT because nothing else has worked, and to try to maintain their fertility. Do we do all the extra stuff? But in general, it's these like late 20s guys to guys my age, 40s and 50s and on, who there's something wrong. There's something missing. They're doing what they're told to train right, to exercise, to, limit stress as much as possible. And again, like you say, there's so many things that go into those things. And you can't isolate out all those things because we don't even know what all is affecting those, variables, what makes us feel like crap. But if you're doing all the right stuff, I honestly call it a trial of TRT at this point. I will put that in my note. Like this guy, I think, would be a good candidate for a trial of testosterone replacement, because if you can get somebody on testosterone and it just tips the scales into that little extra something that they needed, it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy that once they start feeling better, they still have a few things extra to do in their life, get their diet cleaned up a little more, get their training a little better. It just pushes them into it. And it's amazing. It's remarkable, actually, how much better they do. But there's something about the TRT in general, or I hate calling it TRT now, just testosterone optimization on the mental side, because that's the number one thing I see is the brain fog, the lack of just mental clarity, drive. That's what I had. That's the thing guys are looking for. And they're not finding it, obviously not in antidepressants, which is a lot of their doctors are throwing them on that. They're not finding it with supplements. A lot of the things they're told to do, it just doesn't work. And I mean, it honestly helps the mood. I've had guys literally tell me, if I had been on testosterone 5 years ago, I don't think I would have gotten a divorce. Like that's how different it helps.
I've seen it save marriages.
Absolutely. I see it all the time now with couples, because I'll get a guy on, and then he gets the wife involved, and she reaches out to my wife, and they get together, and then they're just like, they become this power couple. And I'm not trying to overplay what hormones can do. You still have to put in work, but hormones, in my opinion, and I've always been fascinated since I was 17 with hormones, because they're in kind of a category all by themselves as what they actually tend to be able to do to a body. I mean, we see it in the bodybuilding world, obviously physically, but on the mental side as well, especially if you got to find your dose where you feel right, but it's just something about it. And so, I'm open to people who, if they're honest with themselves and they come to me and they're like, I'm really trying, but it's just not there. I think a trial of TRT, to me, that's the best bang for your buck in a male. Yeah, they may still need some thyroid optimization. They may need a few tweaks here and there. You're going to tick the most boxes, in my opinion, with testosterone by far.
I already like that you're calling it optimization and not therapy. Like that's, and even when it comes to thyroid optimization, because that's where so much of this has, I think, gone wrong. Whenever we're talking about within normal ranges, when you're talking about blood work, within normal ranges, well, normal is everybody's average, or however they may come up to this calculation. It's not optimal.
No.
The optimal number is totally different.
Well, optimal is different for every person. And I have to stress this. A normal baseline range of anything is just a normal range. It's a statistical range. And as we should know as Christians, you can't derive an ought from an is. So just taking a description of what people are, it really doesn't have anything to do with where they should be when taking an exogenous substance, because those ranges were not made from people taking the substance. So that's the other hoodwink, and it's easy to fall into that like we equate the thing you take with the thing they're measuring at baseline. I'm a little skeptical now as to some of the accuracy of that. It doesn't matter. We don't have to go down that rabbit trail. The point is, anyone who works in, let's say, the biochemistry industry and makes pharmaceuticals knows that when you take a substance, you try to monitor therapeutic blood levels, right, for lots of things. So I had a guy come to me who's a chemist who worked for Pfizer, and now he owns his own company. And we were talking about the ranges, and he was blown away when he had looked into the ranges going, these weren't even made for people taking the substance. I'm like, I know.
No.
But we get hoodwinked by that and think, oh, you got to be in that range.
And it's a shifting thing because testosterone's reduced so much. Like the range was something 30 years ago, and now it's half that.
Exactly. So what's the right one, right? It's like people talking about, the climate change. It's like, do you know the proper temperature that the earth should be? Did God tell you that? Did he give you that? No, that you didn't get that universal ought. And so that's why it's all trial and error based, because I'll have guys that feel fantastic at a level of 700 and a free T of 20. And I got guys that don't feel right until their testosterone is 2000 and their free T is 45, nanograms per deciliter. And we have to be okay with that, because I'm not going to be one of these fear-mongering jerks that say, oh, you're this far out of the range, you're going to have a stroke. It's like, okay, first of all, show me testosterone causing strokes. Second of all, what does the range have to do with the therapeutic dosing? It's a category error.
Yeah, I think one of the things, to consider there too is, and you said, those levels are part of the hoodwink, you get the sort of bait and switch there with what should be and what is that we get a question a lot, especially as Christians, like what's the morality of TRT and things like this. And one thing it's important to remember, just like you said, you can't get an ought from it, is also transitive verbs don't have morality. That's just not how it works. So when you do a thing, no, seriously, when you do a thing, a transitive verb doesn't have any kind of morality attached to it. And so it becomes an impossible question if you frame it as though what you're doing in the sense of basically pharmaceutical technology for your body, has to have some moral implication out of the gate.
Yep.
Right. I think that's part of it.
You can apply that across the board to any other technology, and people would obviously, if I go, is wearing eyeglasses sinful? Is driving a car? Is wearing clothes? You get in this whole naturalistic fallacy.
Taking any supplements whatsoever, getting your vitamin C from a pill instead of food.
Anything. Is lifting man-made weights, is that sinful? I should be lifting a cow every day, right? Like, it's just, you reduce it to absurdity, it shows the absurdity of it. And so if it's sin for you, it's sin for you, is what I say. If you have a moral conscientious issue about taking a substance, now, if you're lying, if you're in a tested sport and you're lying, that's sin. Yeah. That has nothing to do with what we're talking about. And people don't know how to differentiate that. So we get in a genetic fallacy where they associate it with that. So therefore it's a sin here too. It's like, no, it's not the same. So,
yeah. And the thing that I've heard anyway from people that coach Olympians is, I don't, but others that do, like, if you're not using, then you're not on a podium.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
But that's a different topic. So one thing that I see a lot in this world is obsession with SHBG. That it should formulaically dictate your dosage protocol, your dosing frequency, and that it even determines if you're eligible for TRT or not. And like, you have to test. I believe in testing it initially because it's good to get a baseline, but it's really just informational, in my opinion. Yeah. Should we use SHBG to determine dosage protocol or how much you're using or anything like that?
I don't. And I've never seen anything validated to show that, because again, you're talking about a baseline marker that nobody really understands. You can't isolate it out as an independent variable to test what it does, because you'd have to kill the person to do that. That's why you can't do natural science on a human being at all. You can't control all variables but one, because they would be dead. And so the best you have is pattern recognition. That's all we have in this game anyway. Well, the problem with that is just as many people with a low SHBG do well on everyday dosing protocols that do well with once a week protocols, and the vice versa. High SHBG guys, they'll say, oh, you need once a week to drive it down. They may still feel better on a daily injection protocol or whatever. So again, flip a coin, right? You're at that point. I have seen so much speculation about SHBG in the last 3 to 4 years. It has blown my mind. And I fell into that trap a little early on about the dosing thing. And because I never fell into it. I'll just say this. If somebody has a very low SHBG and they're not doing well with, let's say, infrequent injections, try more frequent. But guess what? That doesn't really have anything to do with their SHBG. That can be the same can be said if you just don't do well with less frequent injections, try more frequent. So again, this goes back to the pragmatic side of trial and error. Find out what works best for the patient. Let's not get so hamstrung on markers that don't have the validated meaning that we want them to have. And people want data. People think numbers give them truth. Numbers have to be interpreted. And if you can't know the proper interpretation and the meaning, you're just making up a story. And that's what drives me nuts about most of these things in the medical world. We all do it. I've done it. I'm getting less guilty of it because the more I investigate, especially baseline labs, the more I realize how much mental wanking people are doing about what they mean. Instead of focusing on the big picture of, is what we're doing working? Like it's the same thing with what you guys do, right? Is what we're doing working? And you can get all, the AMPK1 and the mTOR, and it's like, doesn't matter. Are they growing muscle or are they not? Like, that's it. You know,
well, did they stop? Then what do we change?
Yeah, when it comes to SHGB, which is, tell me if I'm getting this right, sex hormone binding globulin, right? Yeah. Is the confusion about that we don't know necessarily what that does, or that we do know what it does, but we don't know how to manipulate it quite the right way? What's the controversy behind that?
The original thought was by the name, right? People get hoodwinked by the names too. Like, oh, it's named that, so it must do that. Is that because these are all done, outside of the body for the most part when they study how drugs interact with these globulins and things, and they say, oh, it binds it. So the thought was that if testosterone is bound to sex hormone binding globulin, it's inactive. That's where they come up with the free testosterone hypothesis that only the free testosterone is active. Well, people have looked into this with not so great studies, in my opinion, over the last, I don't know how many years, that, they think actually testosterone bound SHBG is actually active and still working, has a purpose too. It doesn't matter at the end of the day, because if you really focus on symptom resolution and trial and error, none of it matters. And so that's kind of the point, is like, it's good to see what happens when you give an androgen that SHBG is going to fall, so that you can counsel people that that's a normal thing. What people do is they associate, because there are studies where you'll see people with insulin resistance or type 2 diabetes or other metabolic diseases will have typically often a low SHBG. So they go, well, that means if I have a low SHBG, I must have insulin resistance. No, you need to
correlation without causation.
Yeah.
Or this
it means maybe you should investigate to see if that person has metabolic disease. It's worth investigating because of that.
Exactly.
But I don't think you should conclude basically anything.
My SHBG runs low because I've been on testosterone for 11 years, and I've taken anabolics that drive them even lower. Yeah. I don't have diabetes. I don't have insulin resistance that I know of. I don't have any markers, signs of that, nothing. And on the flip side, I've got guys that'll come with SHBGs 150, 175. They don't have liver disease. They don't have anything that the science says they might have. But again, might that be a marker that you go, okay, maybe I need to look a little deeper? To a point, yes. But the problem is, again, people get so scared about labs and what they mean. They'll go down rabbit trails of interventions and investigations that will drive them crazy.
Yeah.
Instead of going, am I a healthy person in general? Like, you have to kind of look at that big picture too.
I think it's also alarming, the knee-jerk reaction to prescribe hepatotoxic ancillaries at clinics because of low SHBG or highest HBG.
They're treating SHBG and not the patient.
Well, and to be honest, when we talk about insulin resistance and liver dysfunction, those compounds and ancillaries are probably more likely to interfere with those feedback loops between the liver and pancreas, et cetera, and probably more likely to give you things like insulin resistance and things like that. Yeah. So it's really alarming, right? Because actually providing a medicine that might be causal to the thing that they're fearful of, right?
And again, manipulating a marker artificially is not the same as that marker changing for natural reasons for your health getting better. Same with cholesterol, same with any of these things. So that's another hoodwink. I need to drive that number down. It's like people want to artificially reduce their PSA level. I'm like, why? The PSA is not dangerous. It might be telling you something that you need to look into. But they want to take finasteride. Well, guess what happens when you take finasteride? Not only does it wreck your health, it cuts your PSA in half. So we just double it when we get the marker anyway to make up for it, right?
So because then we have an idea of what's going on.
Exactly. But you're still suppressing the signal. And so many people, that's the allopathic way, right? You give a medicine to suppress a signal. You suppress the blood pressure. You suppress whatever. It's literally like putting your hand over your check engine light and going, I'm good. I don't see it anymore. So you're removing a signal. And do we know 100% what these signals mean? No. God didn't give us the blueprint for all that. But pattern recognition over time, we can tend to figure some of this stuff out at least a little bit. Well, why are you suppressing those signals? So with the SHBG thing, again, it's complicated, but I think people overcomplicate it. And I agree, taking these substances, like putting someone on an oral methylated steroid to drive down their SHBG, when if they just need more testosterone, give them more testosterone. Like that's the easiest answer.
Yeah. And I'll say this too about the SHBG thing to close it out. I have very low SHBG. It was very low before TRT. When I got my blood work, I tested it. My total testosterone was 292, and my SHBG was 14.
Yep.
Get on TRT, now it hovers in the lower teens. It'll be 12, sometimes the single digits.
Yep.
And I've dosed once a week. I've dosed twice a week. I did daily for a while. I feel maybe slightly better on twice a week. But if I go out of town and I'm like, I don't want to take it, I'll take 2 weeks worth at once.
Yep.
I don't notice anything whatsoever. I think that guys that are talking about like, oh, I did that and my mood crashed and I blah, blah. I think it's because they expected it to.
I agree. The nocebo effect is real. It's very powerful. If you expect something, I'm guilty of that. I have a very high health anxiety issue from childhood. And so I can overthink myself into anything. I do have some friends who have tried it all, and they can only do daily injection. They crash quick. I had a guy put on cream. He loved it, but he crashed after a couple of hours. He had to do it 3 times a day, which becomes cost prohibitive. I believe him, and he responds that way to anabolics too. He has weird responses. He's just one of those guys. But in general, on the bell curve, no. And again, it's individual. That's why you got to trial and error it. And that's why it's find what works for you and stop thinking about all the lab stuff all the time. Yeah. Yep.
Totally agree. So moving on a little bit here, so some of the things that doctors are often using when a guy has low testosterone. The doctor's like, hey, he's got low testosterone. He's got some of the symptoms. He's got brain fog. He's irritable. He's low energy, maybe even sexual dysfunction. Although the funny thing is, a lot of doctors ask about sexual dysfunction first. In my, experience, that's been the last thing to go. When you have a testosterone issue, you can be functional on very, very low testosterone. It is the last thing to go from what I've seen. That's if it's caused by that. There can be other things, blood pressure can cause it, stuff like that. But the most common thing I'm seeing, Bill gets questions on this all the time. I get questions at least once a week on Facebook asking, my doctor tested, he says I'm low testosterone. He doesn't want to do testosterone. He wants to put me on Clomid because it'll keep my balls from shrinking, and it helps my natural production out. He sold me on it. It's all good to go. I'm afraid of injections, and I'll be like, I wouldn't do that, man. What do you because that I just said what I. So is that good or bad, and why is it thus?
I would never recommend it ever. If you need testosterone, you need testosterone. And again, manipulating a baseline level with an artificial with a synthetic product is not the same thing as taking the actual compound. It's not. You're not. And I did this early on because, they scare you to death about young guys and maintaining fertility. So when I'm right out of practice, it's like, okay, got a 25-year-old who's got low T symptoms, low T. Let's do, and I wouldn't even do Clomid because I hated Clomid. So I'd do tamoxifen because it was at least better tolerated. And I'd get them on tamoxifen for a couple of months. Their numbers would go to 1,200. Guess what? Felt no different. They felt no better. Yeah. In fact, a lot of them felt worse.
Did you, just real quick, did you test their SHBG? Did you see it go up?
No, this was before I even had a clue about any of this. Okay. This was 8-9 years ago when we got out of residency. Before SHBG was really a big topic. But I have seen it go up when they take SERMs. I typically see SHBG go up. I took Clomid in college as PCT therapy. It was the worst freaking experience of my life. Horrible. But no, it's just, I don't understand this fascination that doctors have that they're okay with giving you this synthetic chemical that's short-circuiting the body just to raise a marker that doesn't improve symptoms when they just need testosterone or might, and there are ways to preserve their ball size if they're worried about it. Not that, women care about that. They don't.
We really don't.
I mean, they don't. I have to tell guys that all the time. It's the weirdest thing to be obsessed about. I don't understand it. But fertility, I get. Like, I understand the fertility concern. Yeah, sure. But you're not doing the patient a favor by putting on that to make them feel worse just to, quote unquote, preserve fertility when we can still do things to preserve fertility. And there's no guarantee you're going to lose fertility in the first place. Most guys that get on TRT don't check their fertility status when they get on.
Even the FDA knows that and puts it on the label that it is not valid for birth control because it's not reliable.
No, not even.
I will say this a little bit, just anecdotal. I had a vasectomy several years ago, and I had it reversed actually last year. And the urologist I met with, he's the best in the area for doing the surgery. Doesn't, in my opinion, know jack about hormones or anything like that. And, I was like, so, production wise, I'm on testosterone. Where's it going to be? He's like, oh, it's never suppressive. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, no, that's all. It only happens if guys take steroids. If you're on testosterone, it doesn't suppress your production at all. And it's like, well, I mean, I think it's probably suppressed a little bit. And so my thought was when I get the surgery, I run HCG because I want the pipes full, just maybe less risk of scar tissue formation and things like that. I want things flowing and moving. Yeah. That's my thought process. Yep. Maybe you think it's dumb. I don't know. That was my thought process.
No, I did the same when I've had guys who were going to have vas reversals. It's like, I can't tell you what's going to show when they look at your count there in the OR. But if you want to have the best quote unquote chances, because you can't test that ahead of time and without an extraction. Let's go ahead and get you on some let's go ahead and get you on some HCG, maybe FSH, just to give you the best, because we don't know, and so I do think that was that
was my thought process. But it was funny, I didn't tell him I was on that, and I didn't argue with him, but he could tell I didn't really buy what he was selling there. Right. And so I wake up from the surgery and everything's like, everything's good, and by the way, your sperm count was super high, so you had nothing to worry about. And I was like, okay, cool, thanks.
Yeah, you're like, wink, wink.
It's like, that's good. Also, you have no idea that I'm on like 2,000 IUs twice a week of
Right.
HCG, but whatever. So anyway, side story.
Testicles are huge. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Just like,
The other thing is mentioning that clomiphene and Clomid in general, right, is not designed for male use. There is no dosing standard for male use that is based on anything that anyone will be able to discern from medical research, because it doesn't exist.
Yeah, it's all awful.
Yeah, and so for men, it's a pretty terrible compound. And Jordan, you mentioned using it for PCT, and there is a really deep rabbit hole here of bodybuilders coming off cycle and going on heavy PCT and having blood clots during their PCT.
And all oral estrogen derived substances. There's
a very strong correlation. You can't say it's causal necessarily, but when you're coming off of a large drug stack and then you're introducing something like Clomid that's very strong in its own right, and especially at higher doses than recommended typically, then you've got sort of the perfect storm for the rarest possible effects a medicine can have, And so,
I don't think the juice isn't worth the squeeze, in my opinion, when now we kind of know that you'll probably regain function with or without a PCT. And guys I understand the unknown, the fear of it. I do. And I want to do whatever I can, but it's like, you have to do that within reason. And if you're slamming these synthetic chemicals into your body, HCG is pretty dirty on its own, right? It is. I mean, it gets the job done. There's no denying it causes an effect. I mean, that we can show that with the studies they did with it. If you knew how they actually derived that substance in the first place, just because you can do something and get an effect doesn't mean it's healthy or good for you. So you have to use it judiciously and just, that's where informed consent comes in. That's where knowing how these things work, using them, just right tool, right job, right? Broderick Chavez. I'm all about Broderick Chavez, like right androgen for the right job, right tool for the right job at the right time, then drop it. But I don't know if PCT, and that's a whole different topic, is even necessary.
Yeah, even the studies that I've read about Clomid for PCT purposes, all the guys that ran Clomid, they did recover function, but it was no faster, and most of them had lower sperm counts. Testosterone was similar, but the sperm count was actually lower.
Yeah.
So put that in your pipe and smoke it, I guess.
It's neuroscience, myth, most of it, and we all get sucked into that. I did when I was younger, and that's why I did it. I was on the forums and in the year 2001, and that's just what you did, and you took, I took an Astrazole with my cycles at the time, because that's just what you did, and until I looked into it, so.
And the other thing I see sometimes, I don't want to spend any time on this, is oral testosterone, the Testosterone which I guess, spoiler alert, you absorb almost none of it, and you have to take basically grams of it per day to get anything out of it, and you're probably going to get severe gastric distress.
Yeah, it's cost prohibitive. I mean, they may come up with a way down the road that's better, it's more concentrated, that doesn't cause those issues. But I mean, the best I saw in the studies, the average T levels were in the 400s, which is terrible for most people as far as symptom resolution. There are compounding pharmacies that are able to get a hold of this and start compounding it, but you're taking like 2 capsules twice a day. The cost is not, it doesn't make sense for people, and they're still not getting their levels up like you could with cream or injections. So,
Is the reason people go for that because they're afraid of injecting?
They are, and a lot of them, not on the compounded side, but a lot of people demand to use their insurance for things. And so but then that's not in my world. So if they're going the allopathic route, insurance is already determining what you can and can't do, but they want their insurance to pay for it. So they'll get on one of these brands, Jatenza or whatever they are now. It's just rebranded Andriol from the old school days, like just crap tesandecanoate, oral. Which even then everybody knew was a terrible steroid, right? It never worked. Nobody liked it because you take so much. Even females hated it. I think back in the 80s.
I do like injectable for TRT though. By the way, I ran it for a year, and I think it's just the stability. Actually, I just kind of felt good on it. I just hated because the carrier oil is so thick. Yes. It took like 3 minutes to inject.
And there's risk if they worry. They tell you about oil embolism. Again, those of us who've injected 3 cc's at a time before, like, whatever. But I
don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah. I don't either. Theoretically. That was a long time ago. Undecanoate, I think, can be fine but the problem is the insurance-based protocols are ridiculous. The dosing every 10 weeks or 10 weeks.
Oh,
if
it's
you could
terrible.
dose it every 2-3 weeks, you could probably be fine on that. Once you
I did it every 2 weeks.
Yep.
I did it every 2 weeks, just doubled my weekly dose. And actually felt better than twice a week Cypionate.
Interesting.
Honestly. Yeah. That's just me. and that's a guy with as low of SHBG as it gets,
Right.
basically.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So let's switch gears because we're going down this route anyway for just a second. So, Jordan, tell us what the problem is in modern allopathic medicine with the inductive reasoning and correlation method. We talked a little bit about this. Can you just sort of talk about recognizing it? I mean, obviously, I don't think any of us have a solution for it because all of us do it too. But where's the problem lie, and how do we recognize it? And for anybody listening, how do they recognize it so that when they're taking charge of their own care, they can avoid some of that fallacy and get in a place where they feel like they understand what's going on?
And this could be a topic for like 3 podcasts. And like induction is basically, there's different ways to think about it. Is you can't derive a universal from particulars. Okay, it's the reason you get a statistic and you get a curve. Well, it's already, you got different outcomes on a curve. They average it. Well, who told you to average it? What the average is not real because every individual on that plot is different. Number one. Number two, you can't universalize any of those results as a universal claim. That's what deduction is. You take a universal down to a particular. In my worldview, I can only get universals from God. He's the only one that's omniscient. He's in his revelation gives us the only universals we can actually know. And I truly mean know if I have faith in that. If I have faith in the scriptures, then I can know it's true. Again, epistemological rabbit trail. Induction, too, is the form of a lot of the arguments used, and this is what people get hoodwinked by every day. We all use this fallacy. My favorite fallacy I ever learned was before I went to medical school, the fallacy of asserting the consequent. Okay, if X, then Y, therefore X. This is how all research and all causation claims are made. Even the scientific method, which is never followed, even if you could follow it, you're still appealing to an effect to claim the cause. And that's always a logical fallacy. It doesn't mean you're wrong, but you can't use that logic to know you're right. So then you're left in this world of skepticism, like, well, then I can't know the cause of this. And it's like, I know, it sucks. And that's what I want people to recognize. It's not that there's not utility. These things work because people, well, we can do things and get them to work. Yeah, that's technology and that's tinkering and that's trial and error. Yeah. That's why it's different for every person when they do these things. And it's more of an epistemological issue of knowledge where people want to know something 100% and you just can't. It doesn't mean these studies are worthless. The beauty, in my opinion, of correlative studies is falsification because, in my opinion, if there is a causation, there should also be a correlation, right? If X causes Y, it should also be correlated with Y. Well, if you can show that there's no actual correlation, you can probably safely, now you can't universalize it, but you can feel comfortable at best you can going, I'm pretty comfortable saying there's not a causation there. And that's what they've done with a lot of these studies on prostate cancer and testosterone, cardiovascular risk and testosterone, is they're falsifying the claims because they're not showing a real difference. Now, even the studies, if you're comparing 2 separate groups, well, what does that have to do with anything? Because, again, this is why I hate medical studies that talk about like risk prevention or preventing anything. You can't know your alternative future. So you can't know that doing anything prevented something from happening because you don't know what was going to happen without doing it anyway. Yeah. And so they compare different people and different groups. They say, wait, we matched them. We're different. We're all individuals. You can't match other people.
Match what variables in those people.
The only thing you could do is clone yourself into the alternate universe and change one variable and everything else is the same. That's the only thing you could possibly do. Well, we can't do that. And so that's the problem with studies in general, with any kind of correlative observational studies. Experimentalism and versus statistics became a big hot topic back in the day. You can find old papers on this, and there's like this head-to-head match with people who are like, no, you have to experiment. And that's where like a placebo-controlled randomized trial is like the best you're going to get, even though you're still comparing 2 separate groups. If you can show a big enough difference, like I took this and this happened and all these people and that did not happen at all in this group, it's like, okay, my common sense, my inductive reasoning is going to go, I'm going to go with that. Does that mean that's a knowledge claim and universal claim? No, but it's good enough for me. It's pattern recognition. Yeah. That's why those trials are considered, they're not science in the natural science form, because natural science, you're trying to find the cause. With placebo-controlled trials, you're trying to find the effect. You already know the cause, the drug you're giving or the intervention you're doing. So it's just the flip side of the scientific method. And there's nothing wrong with that. The logic seems sound until you learn a little more logic and go, that's actually affirming the consequence, a fallacy. But we all operate our everyday lives that way. So I think
we to be fair too, we have to have heuristics.
You have
or
to,
you
absolutely.
can't walk out the front door. Like
Yep.
you have to believe that the door will open when you turn
I
the
have to
knob.
believe
You have
it.
to
That's why I
believe
know
the
it
screws will hold.
That's
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's
We
right.
have to do this. It's just that we also
That's
have
right.
to be honest in
Yep.
recognizing where those heuristics are and where we make those logical leaps and
100%.
things like that. They're not.
100%.
It's not that you can't do it.
That's
but
right.
you have to acknowledge the limitations when you assert a truth
100%.
claim.
That's exactly what it is. It's more of it's a pet peeve of mine when it comes to knowledge, because so many guys in these spaces want to claim absolute truth, absolute knowledge claims with this stuff. It's like, that's not how it works. I think about it in scripture when Jesus is talking to the Pharisees, like, you guys look at the sky and you know when a storm's coming, but you can't recognize the sign of the times. Well, can I actually look at the sky and know exactly what the weather's going to do? No. And that's not what he meant by that. He's just generalized it to saying, you guys are looking at this and prudence would say, oh, I may want to take cover. A storm may come. Doesn't mean you know it's going to. And so that, I agree. Heuristics are, you have to live your life with them. I just think people put too much on what these mean. And they also don't think about the methods being used to make the claims. And that gets into more the rabbit trail of biochemistry and molecular stuff that nobody can actually show you. And that's where I think people get sucked into rabbit trails that they end up missing the forest for the trees. And that's what we were talking about earlier, about missing what are we doing? Is it achieving the goal? If not, let's change something. That's technology. That's pragmatic. That's utilitarian. And there's nothing wrong with that. But I do want people to understand that in the correlative world, everybody knows the phrase correlation is not causation. We all hear it. We all know it. We all understand it. But yet you read these papers, and by the end of it, they've done observational studies and correlated, and then they start making causation claims. And you're like, you guys know better than this, but you still do it. And that's what I see in practice. I see doctors telling people stories about, oh, your hematocrit's this, you're going to have a stroke. I'm like, you want to show me the cause there? You want to show me where somebody's hematocrit caused a stroke?
Prove it.
Like, you can't prove that. So you want them to go do
especially that red blood cells aren't even what cause clots. It's
and
platelets.
Actually, they've done studies, at least on primates, and I hate in vitro. So these are actually at least in vivo studies where the lower the hematocrit increases platelet activity. It actually increases clotting factors, not the higher. We've got guys being studied with hematocrits of 70% that live in South America who have no increased risk, compared to the other normal people of clotting or stroking out. They're not being told to phlebotomize every 8 weeks or whatever. But yet bleeding yourself with a phlebotomy is a medical intervention. You're inducing tissue ischemia rapidly. There are concerns with this. You lower your iron over time. You can feel worse doing it. So, like, from a moral standpoint, I'll just say this. For me, I cannot recommend somebody do a medical intervention like that without a validated reason to do it, other than fear mongering, which is what we get. And it's like, to me, that's the opposite of how it should be. So,
totally agree.
I agree.
I think there's a million examples of things like that. Ingested cholesterol is going to raise your cholesterol. Like, there's a mile long list of
absolutely
these
and then
eggs are
these
gonna kill us all.
correlations that have
that
have actually
all of them. I mean, that's and with cholesterol, again, we go back to ApoB, like we're talking about in the pre-show. Okay, so you've subfractionated something even more on a test tube that you don't have a clue that how it works in the body like that. You're not using it experimentally. And then you're just correlating it with people's health. It's like, well, so what if less healthy people might have a different level of this? What does that have to do with that level in a healthy person, or at all, as far as causation goes? And that's the point. It's like, you don't know, but they're claiming it like they do. And then it helps them sell their products. And that's what frustrates me.
And you and I have seen this, I mean, just recently, right? Up close, where we had a medical professional tell us that otherwise healthy individuals suffered from issues with TRT with no information as to whether or not they were legitimately healthy before. This is a crazy leap in logic, and people should be really, really wary of those claims, because they are just that. They're scare tactics. It's fear-mongering. There's no way to prove any of that, because you'd have to have a lifetime of medical history for that person. And guaranteed, there is no person in the world right now who is otherwise healthy in every single way. That's just not a person that exists. And so,
and people want a scapegoat, right? I mean, the things that testosterone gets blamed for, if you're on it and something happens, it was the testosterone, which is insane. First of all, I see it all. I had a patient today had a superficial thrombophlebitis, a blood clot, but in one of the superficial veins. Happens a lot, not a big deal. Guess what was blamed? Guess what he was told to do? cut his testosterone in half. I'm like, where'd you get half? That's arbitrary. Where did they pull it out of their butt?
Is that going to cut his risk in half now for stroke?
Yeah. Right. I'm like, do we go castrating people not on TRT who get superficial thrombophlebitis?
Well, that's like how often is the advice given when you're going to have surgery? Oh, stop your testosterone at least several weeks out because we don't want you to be on TRT because you have a stroke on the table.
I've never had a surgical patient. I mean, I'm a urologist by training, hundreds, thousands of surgeries. Never had anyone stop their testosterone before. In fact, I was blown away when I heard that was a thing. We weren't trained that way to ever say that. This notion of hormones equals blood clots has, again, it's urban legend because yes, there are some hormones that likely do cause that. Usually these things women were taking that weren't bioidentical. I use that phrase.
Yeah, all the birth control pills, the progesterone and estrogen derived birth control pills.
Immediately what I thought of when you said
absolutely can lead to stroke. So I'll make that truth claim.
Well, I say that I don't know that for a fact because you got to look at other variables because you don't know their internal milieu. You don't know.
True.
The same reason you can't look at a hematocrit and know what the blood is a tissue.
There's a strong association. That's all I can say. But like that's it. But we don't. There's no evidence for that being the case with testosterone.
Exactly.
Like it's
again falsification. That's the beauty of it. When you don't show a correlation, then why are you guys fear mongering about all this?
So I'll even put out there. Here's a limitation that could potentially be with that truth claim that I just made. Most women that are on birth control have a struggle with weight gain because it does tend to lead to that. And if you have excessive weight, then you have an increased stroke risk.
Stroke risk, right?
Yep.
So maybe that
it's all tied in, and that's my point. Is like you can't know because we're not omniscient, and that's my favorite. One of my favorite quotes from Gordon Clark, was one of my philosophical heroes in the Christian world, was that omniscience is the requirement, and omniscience is in short supply. Like we don't have, like God is the only one that knows this. And that's why I get frustrated with these claims that people know how the body works and all these pathways inside a cell. It's like, you don't know it. You weren't given the blueprints. Like I can't even unbake a cake, and I know how to bake a cake with the right ingredients. You cannot unbake the human body into constituent parts because you don't know what's there to begin with. So you add a lot of chemicals, you get a product, and you say, this is what's actually there in the body. You don't know that. Doesn't mean you can't find that useful. It doesn't mean you can't make drugs that do things. Doesn't mean you can't take a pituitary gland out of a goat and dehydrate it and inject it into a rat and get their testicles to grow and make a claim that that's a chorionic gonadotropin or whatever you want to call it, right? You're still getting the effects are real. We can all agree. Yeah, we see the effects. Doesn't mean your story's real. It doesn't mean you need to get hoodwinked down the rabbit trail. And that's my bigger point. It's not that I don't like saying we can't know. No, it depends on how you define knowledge, right? We get into that big rabbit trail. When I talk about knowledge, I talk about absolute truth cannot be wrong. To me, that only comes from God. Everything else, we're like, I don't know. I'm speculating. I'm doing the best I can.
Yeah, I think the like propensity towards this in argumentation, common argumentation, also obfuscates claims that are probably more reliable as well because it puts them on equal footing, which doesn't make a ton of sense. And so, a great example is that, when we talk about, Justin, you and I have talked about this before, is pseudo-diabetes on high-fat diets. It's something people need to be aware of if they have insulin resistance genetically, if it's something that they have an issue.
Some sort of propensity.
Yeah, if they have a propensity towards insulin resistance, they should be cautious. If they're a thyroid patient, they should be cautious with high-fat diets and things like this. It's not that a high-fat diet doesn't work for people. It's not that it's unhealthy for everybody. We don't ever make that claim, but a higher hemoglobin A1C is reliably demonstrated, 100% of the time, with a higher fat diet. It doesn't mean it's a bad thing in everybody, and it could be expected. But in some folks, it could cause issues. And so what happens is when you say that to someone and go, hey, this is a thing to be aware of, they take it as a truth claim, like the same kind of truth claim that someone else would make about something that's sort of off the rails. And it gets obfuscated, and you go, well, I'm telling you the truth about something that does happen. I'm just not making any claims about what will happen going forward.
Well, here's the thing. It's what they do is they get into the genetic fallacy route where they associate what you're saying with something else they want to talk about, and they equate them. And you and I talked about that in a messenger, right, where you thought I meant something on one of my comments, and it was like, once you said what you said, I was like, I totally agree with you. Like, every single claim rests on itself, and people want to combine them with other claims so they can just disregard it, and you can't do that. And everything is nuanced too. Like, these diet claims, especially, like, and it does depend on the person. It depends on the health status of the person too, about what they might be better off eating at the time. Like, there were things I couldn't eat when my gut was wrecked the last 9 weeks because my tissue needed to heal, versus what a healthy person with a healthy gut should be eating, right? It's no different than if I have an ulcer on my arm, there's certain clothes that may not rub it wrong, and there's certain things that rub it that are gonna make it not heal. Well, if you have healthy skin, I don't have to worry about that, right? So context matters as well, and people don't want to talk about the little nitty-gritty context of these things. Same thing with food. When I talk about eat real food, like, I'm talking about actually the quality of the food, where it's sourced. Like, I'm not talking about in the context of calories in, calories out, fat loss. That's a whole separate topic. I've lost 50 pounds in a year doing If It Fits Your Macros, but I wasn't worried about the quality of my food that year, right? And I don't know that my health was as good as it could have been had I actually just eaten real food. But those are two separate categories, and people commit the category errors and try to conflate them. And so I think that's why, as Christians, we have got to be better than that. We have got to be patient, and I'm a stickler for definitions. So I'm always like, when people say something, make a truth claim, it's like, can you define that term and tell me exactly what you're talking about? Because I don't want to. We will start talking past each other real quick if we don't do that. So
totally agree. I want to conclude too with realize where the scientific method came from. It came from the church. It came from Christians, because there was a belief before that, and before the Middle Ages, that truth is unknowable. We're in a spiritual world. It's undiscernible, and it's random and subject to, whatever superstition and, whatever, and all sorts of other things.
Of the day,
it's chaos, right?
Yep.
Christians said there's a God of order who created the universe to be consistently and upholds the laws of that universe, and once in a while intervenes with miracles, but otherwise those laws are consistent, and that they can be knowable. They definitely can be. However, as we know now, they're often very difficult to know.
Yeah.
Even Newtonian laws of physics, they totally break down basically the smaller you get, the less sense they tend to make. However, we serve a God of order, but he has not revealed all truth to us.
Right.
He's revealed the truth that we need for our spiritual well-being. That's about it.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of mystery in that book too.
100%. 100%. And that's been my journey the last few years, is frustration, because I want to know everything. I'm the guy that wants to know it all. And the more I read scripture over and over again, the more I realize how much I don't know, and how much the secret things truly do belong to God. And it becomes arrogance on my part to try to demand to know every little nuanced thing, and why did God do it that way, and how does sovereignty work, and all these things. Yeah. It's even a bigger deal though in the natural world, and that's the thing, is there's some things in the natural world I think you're right we can know, and I think they're actually revealed in scripture. Most of what we're talking about is not the natural world. What we're talking about is the man-made world, is the technology world, and that's where it becomes utility. Are we using this for a purpose to glorify God, to help ourselves? I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. Where we get the problem, in my opinion, is the stories that men put in underneath to make a claim about reality that can't be verified, because that's the hubris of man doing that. And that's where I've started seeing more of that come out. And things I used to make claims about, I have to be more careful now to go, it might be true. I can make up 1,000 stories to fit a known effect. That doesn't mean any of them are true, because that's just reverse engineering, right? So that's my whole point with that. It's not that we can't know certain things. I think effects are known. I think we can all see the effects of things. It's just stories that can't be validated sometimes, and that's okay. And I think people don't like that. They're uncomfortable with the not knowing.
And we need to also acknowledge how seldom we're able to repeat the consistency of those effects, right? And the limitations of observing an effect.
Yeah. And again, I tell this to people because I'm a stickler on the scientific method, because nobody follows it. These scientists that claim they do, they never do. But even if you did, if you can recreate an observed natural phenomenon in a lab, does that mean you just recreated the actual phenomenon? No, you can't recreate the phenomenon. God made that phenomenon. So you don't know all the variables that are causing that one. You know what you just made. Well, guess what? You're back to technology. You just made it. That's great. Do something with it. Refine it. Make it better. There's nothing wrong with that. And I think, again, people want to go into the genetic fallacy of like, oh, you just don't think that that's real. I'm like, no, what they did in the lab was real. It's just not what's out there in the world. Like, you can't know that. So that's
there's so much to that, as far as like, whenever we try to give our interpretation or our own definition of things, like that is really one of the first sins, is trying to put yourself in the place of God. And so that's a lot where that goes wrong, but we're also meant to steward the things that we are given. We are built in creative ways to do creative things.
100%.
And so to not do anything with that or learn anything just because we can't know everything
That's right.
would be also sinful.
I
So
agree.
we do need to have that understanding that the more we know, the less we really realize we do know, but that should be causing awe of the Lord. That should not be causing us to stand still.
Oh, I totally agree. And again, like
Definitely.
you said, we're meant to create. We're meant to do these things to honor God, and that's why I think you just have to separate the categories and say those are all great things. Just don't overstep your bounds to start making claims about these are the secrets of the universe that I've discovered when you actually don't know that. Just do with it what you can do with it, and that's the difference for me, at least. That's kind of how I started seeing things, and that's why I look at TRT now differently. I do. I don't look at it as chasing a number, fulfilling an algorithm. I look at it as this person's suffering. This person has a need. I think this may be the thing that might help them. If it's not, guess what? We can mark it off the list and move on. I think that's great, and I don't think that's sinful for all the guys that want to get in y'all's group and bash taking hormones. It's like you're gonna have to show me your standard for that. I mean, Anyway,
Awesome.
Well, we need
Jordan,
two more
thank you so much.
podcasts, by the way, because we covered about 1/100th of what.
Yeah, I agree.
I know I'm thinking of more topics like just as we're talking.
We should just schedule a regular monthly podcast with
I'll do
Jordan
it.
and
I'd love
go down the rabbit holes because this could be a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll see about getting you on again for sure as many times as we can because this was a lot of fun. I think a lot of people are going to find this useful. There's going to maybe be some hate, but bring it on.
I'm ready for it.
Yeah. Well, cool. Thank you, Jordan, so much for coming on. Really appreciate your
appreciate
expertise and the message that you're putting out there. And if anyone wants to follow him, he's I think Dr. Jordan Grant on Facebook.
No doctor, just Jordan Grant.
No, just Jordan Grant. Yeah. So see, to the rest of you guys that are interested in maybe talking to us about how we might be able to help you with your health needs, highcolumnfitness.com. You can talk to one of us about how we might be able to help you out. Until then, gain some grace.